This recording will show you how you can deal with some compiler errors related to Java generics. Many students have an issue with this, but we need to get rid of these compiler warnings to be sure that we have quality code. What I'm going to show you is an actual example of some student code from a previous year. You can see I've got, about half a dozen or so Java files. I'm going to compile them. You'll recall that while you're probably using an IDE like Eclipse, I don't use that for my grading. So instead, I've downloaded a zip file that the student put into Canvas, and I've unzipped it and I've CD'd into the directory, and you can see I have these Java files. So I'm going to compile these. This is what I normally do is star.java, and we're going to see it will come back and warn me that I need to do a little more work. You'll notice it says that there are some unsafe operations, and to get the details I need to use excellent. Well, that's fine. It's showing me exactly what I need to do. Use excellent. I'm going to do them all again, and this time you can see I'm going to get quite a few warnings. There they are. We've got a total of 14. As usual, when you get warnings, what you want to do is you want to start with the first one. So I'm going to scroll back up here until I find my first warning. Here we go. Now you'll notice that what's going on here is that I'm doing a new on an array, and it's going to give me an unchecked cast. You'll recall in class we explained how we aren't allowed to do a new on this generic of D for an array, which we should be able to do, but we can't. And so there's no way to get rid of this warning. And so this warning, you're going to have to live with it, but it will not count off of your project. Coming down here, you see we have another example of where we're doing a compile, or I should say we're doing an array, where we're having to cast it because we're not able to do a new on the generic. So that's another one of those that we can't do anything about, will not count off. And finally, there's a third one where that's the case. So once we get through those, you'll see we have what we can deal with, which is this warning about a raw type. And this is a little tricky because at first glance, it looks like I have a generic here. I have a generic for my pseudo array list, angle brackets, that indicates a generic, and it's of type node, which at first glance seems pretty reasonable. But when we think about it, that node is also a generic structure, which means I have to specify its generic as well. So let's look at that. This is priority queue, and it's at line 6. So let's pull that up. Priority queue. Here we go. And I'm going to come down and find line 6, which is here. This is the line it was just pointing out to us. And you'll notice if I come down just a little bit, I've got where I have the class node, and you'll notice node is a generic class, and that means wherever I use node, I need to specify a generic to go with it. So let's go ahead and drop that in. It looks a little weird because it's a generic within a generic, but that's fine. We can do that. I've saved the file. I'm going to come back and I'm going to try compiling it again. And you can see I've gone from like 14 warnings to like 4 warnings. The first 3 are the ones that we had previously, and now I can see this last one, which is a redundant cast E. Now with generics, the whole point of the generic is that we don't need to cast. And so whenever you have a generic in a cast, you can be pretty much assured that that's wrong. If you've declared everything correctly, you don't need it, okay? If we follow through this, we can look at heap array item at data. That data is already of type E, and therefore assigning into a type E does not need a cast. That's at line 100. So let's go down there and see what we got. Here's line 100. Where are you? No, it's like right in front of me somewhere. Here it is. down at the bottom. There's our cast that it's complaining about as being redundant. So let's just get rid of that. And let's save this file. And let's try this again. And sure enough, that gets rid of our redundant cast. And we only have 3 warnings left now, and they're all related to these generic arrays that we can't do anything about. And so we are done. And this is a program now that instead of having about 100 points taken off of it, will not have any points taken off of it for compiler warnings.